Excellent. Shall I start, Amal?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thanks a lot. As you can see, there is already the first typo. So the prizes will be given for people who find out more typos. So this is can zones be used for reachability in time push down time data meta. So this is work jointly with Paul Gaston and Karthik Prakash, who's a master student at IIT Bombay, and will appear at CAR this year. So let's just start, and I think we'll start with something which I hope. So this session, and I think definitely this talk is at a different flavor from the previous two talks. We are moving from synthesis to automata, and in particular quantitative automata. So we want to kind of look at the classical model of time systems, which is timed automata, introduced by Allure and Dill in 1990, where the main idea is to look at clocks as variables, right? So basically you have a bunch of real valued variables, which are called clocks. And when you take a transition, so this is just a DFA in which when you take a transition, you have the possibility of putting guards on the transition, which is a constraint on these clocks. Right? In addition, on some transitions, you can also reset these clocks, which means it becomes set back to zero. So, and the basic idea is that when we do this, the dynamics of the system evolves along with this time. So for instance, if I'm at time 00, I cannot take this transition T2. I have to wait one time unit to elapse. So the semantics is given as a sequence of discrete moves and then time elapses. And so after one time unit, at 1.1 time unit, for instance, you can do this, right? So this we all know, and I hope we don't need to kind of go into that. And we also know that reachability for this is p-space complete, and this is already known in 1990. And the way it was shown was to show that actually a finite abstraction is sufficient for analyzing such time systems, such time automata. And this finite abstraction was the so-called region abstraction. So I won't go into the details. This is just to flash a picture for those who vaguely remember this, but don't remember it exactly. And the point about regions is that it's kind of a bunch of constraints which which give a finite abstraction, but in general, it can be a very large abstraction. Right. And the point about this is this gives decidability. In fact, you can show it space complete. The question of reachability, which is, can you reach given a target state from an initial state following this time dynamics, right? And this is a very well studied model with many, many extensions. I mean, the paper is being cited, I don't know, 10,000 times or whatever it is. And so we all know about this. But the other side of this kind of the picture, maybe one could say one of the reasons of wide acceptance is also that there is this, there is a way to make this implementable, right? Despite it being a p-space complete problem, in practice, it does work better. And the way that worked was to actually look at not the region-based abstraction, but a different abstraction called the zone-based abstraction of timed automata. And this is basically what is used in pretty much all the decent tools which work on timed automata. And essentially, you can think of this as a better way to abstract the constraints. So rather than having a very kind of fine abstraction which the regions give you, you can kind of take unions of these regions and make zones out of them. The problem is, in general, they can be infinite, but you can kind of come up with rules, kind of come up with conditions under which you can prune them and make them finite. And this is kind of what makes it usable in practice for various benchmarks, right? So this is kind of the large story, and I hope we all have some idea of this. Don't worry if you don't know what are zones at this point. I'm going to kind of show them by example as we go on, right? So the question really in this talk and this work that we are trying to address is, can zones work for extensions of timed automata? And in particular, the extension that we are interested in is what is called push-down timed automata. So this is a very kind of a natural extension. And all we are saying is that you take the timed automaton model as it is, and you add a stack to it. Okay, so you add a push-down stack, so which means that it's a last in, first out stack. So you have a bunch of a stack. And so in your transitions, other than the clock constraints, you can now have also thing saying, okay, push a stack, push a symbol on the stack. So push a whenever you go from Q to Q1 to Q0. And then if you want to try fire this Q0, Q2 transition, you must pop an A. In other words, it must be the case that there was an A at top, otherwise you can't go. So for instance, if two A's were not there, you would not be able to go from Q0 to Q3, right? So this is a kind of a natural mix of two standard, let's say, automata 101 kind of, or maybe 102 objects of timed automata and pushed on automata. And which is, again, not surprising that it was already formalized in 1994. So 1990, remember, was timed automata, and 1994 already, actually, yeah, depending on how you look at it, was the push on timed automata, right? And then, what could be a kind of an application for this? Well, we can use this to, for instance, model Boolean programs which have timers in them, right? And so on. So you can see that both from a theoretical and a practical point of view, this is kind of a natural model to consider. So, and again, unsurprisingly, from 1994 to now, there have been a huge bunch of results on this. This is just a kind of a small subset of the results. This model, for instance, was Abdullah Ateek and Steinman, I think 2012 in LIX, where they tried to extend the model to have time on the stack also. The model, the paper by Clemente Lasota in LIX 2015 showed that actually the way they had added the time can be untimed. The stack can be untimed very easily. And then they also showed that, but there are other ways you can time the stack which cannot be easily. So there's basically what I'm trying to say is that it's a well-researched topic, right? So there's a huge bunch of results and almost kind of many extensions also of this theory. But surprisingly, there is not that many implementations. So there are a couple of ones which in our group we've been looking at with Krishna also. And in 2017, we had a tree automata based approach. And in 2020, with Sparsho, who is, I think, also in the audience, we had kind of an approach which more took it to the direction of multi-push down systems. But there again, it was through regions, right? And the question there, then we kind of, that one could ask is, there is no known zone-based approach. And why is that? What is the reason why there is kind of this lack of zones? And that's kind of going to be the focus of this talk.
So,
right?
a question.
Yep.
Is
Please,
the problem decidable? I mean, reachability and these.
Yeah, decidable. I think even the stronger model is time complete. Decidability follows by, I mean, there is at least 2-3 techniques by which you can show it's decidable. And in fact, region automation based technique also, so the 2012 paper, for instance, and 1994 also already shows the reachability is decidable. 2012 gives for a slightly stronger model decidability and time completeness. And 2015 shows that those two models were actually the same. So time completeness for the original model.
So is it like a combination of region and the push down?
Yeah, exactly.
Reachability.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So exactly. So it's a way in which you can combine this, and it's not completely obvious how to do it, but that is not the story I want to tell in this talk. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So we are really interested in what about zones? What is the problem with zones, and why is it that people haven't yet looked at it? And it turns out that there's a very nice graph theoretical kind of way to attack this problem, and that's what I'm going to try to intuit in the last 20 minutes, right? So, so the question, the problem, now let me formally state it. So we'll be looking at the well-nested control state reachability problem. So is there a run in this push down timed automaton from an initial state to a target state such that between the initial and the target states, the stack can grow arbitrarily, but when it starts and when it ends, it should be empty. Is that fine? So that's why it's well nested, if you wish, right? So this is kind of a technical restriction, and later we can, if the time permits, I can tell you why it can be lifted also. So our goal is to develop a zone-based reachability algorithm, which will actually compute the set of all reachable control states. So anything which is control state reachable with an empty stack, I will be able to kind of compute this set, right? So that's kind of the goal. And when we do this zone-based exploration, we will see that the main challenge is that each recursive call starts a new exploration. So in some sense, you have an infinity because of exploration of time, and you have an infinity coming because of exploration of this push-down system. And how do we use simulations to prune it to obtain finiteness? This is really the, so this, I mean, if you don't know what is simulation, what is prune and all, don't worry, I'm going to define it. This is more for the people who already know this and kind of are wondering what is the difficulty in the problem. So this is going to be the outline of the last 20 minutes of my talk. So first, I'm going to look at re-look at zone algorithms for for just general timed automata, but I'm going to slightly change the focus of how we look at it. Right. So those of you who don't know or don't remember zones, I will give a very rough, brief, and dirty introduction to zones. Then we will pinpoint the difficulty in lifting it to PDTA and why using it naively, if we just try to lift it, it doesn't work. And then we will show how to make it work all through pictures, and that will give us the algorithm. And then we will kind of say a couple of words about the implementation and what were the challenges and what were our experimental results. So that's kind of going to be the goal of the remaining part of the talk. If there are any questions at this point, I can take it. Otherwise, we'll go into the zones.
So Akshay, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So when you say the difficulty about the zone, maybe I missed this thing. Like, are there already existing tools or algorithms which work with regions on this push-down timed automaton?
Well, yes. So this other tool, which is the earlier tool that we have, works with a region-based abstraction, but it works only for closed guards. But it does work with regions. And the earlier tool in 2017, there is one also which used a more tree automata-based approach for the same thing. But essentially, the issue is that just as going in timed automata, going from regions to zone made implementability doable. Here also, we want to say that having a zone approach will mean that we can actually now start looking at real benchmarks.
Sure.
Right?
Okay. Thanks.
Right. All right. So let's delve into kind of what are zones, right? So I'm not going to define it formally, but I'm going to do it through this example, right? So here is a timed automaton. So you have two states. You reset both the clocks, and then on Q1 you check whether x is equal to 1, and if so, you reset the clock. It's a dumb automaton, right? So if you think about what is the set of clock valuations, that is, what is what is the value of the clocks at any point of time? If in the beginning, so I'm going to plot the x and y clock on the x and y axis. In the beginning, both were 0. And if I allow time to elapse, right, any amount of arbitrary time elapse, which I will denote by this strange arrow on the top, then I will get this whole line, right? Because when time elapses, I can go from this point, because the time elapses the same rate at x and y, I can go to the top. And such conjunction of such constraints, like here, for instance, we conjuncted y minus x equal to 0 and x is greater than or equal to 0. These are called zones, right? So that's pretty much all I'm going to use as zones. And this is kind of the initial zone, which we start with, which is the time elapse on the initial point, right? And then what happens? So when I try to fire a transition from a zone Z, from a zone Z, if I fire a transition T, which has a guard G and a reset R, what happens? So let's do it in this example. So I have this, let's say I started with the zone, right? The zone, which is this array, and I did this transition. Essentially, what this means is that this transition is fireable exactly when x is equal to 1. So all I need to do is conjunct the zone, which is a set of constraints, with the constraint given by the guard. In other words, I take this zone, conjunct it with the guard, and I obtain this point. Is that clear? And then what the next thing it does is that this transition also tells you, then reset the clock. And what is a reset? Essentially, reset means you make the clock's x, only the x value, to become 0. So from this point that we go to this point where x becomes 0. That is just a projection onto the y-axis, right? Because x became 0. And indeed, then we should again consider all the points where you can obtain by elapsing time. So we get this as my resultant zone. So in other words, the firing of this one transition went from, basically gave us, it's suddenly not allowing me to go back and forth. Interesting.
You should pop some thing.
I should what?
I think it's stuck.
I think it's stuck, yes. Oh, okay, something happened. Oh no, something bad happened again. Yeah, this is going to happen a couple of more times because my laptop, which I use, usually crashed and I switched to iPad in the last minute. So yeah, let's hope I finish the talk. All right, so this is basically the idea. So basically what I'm saying is that when I fire a transition, I get a resultant zone. That's pretty much all I'm trying to say. Okay, this is going to be fun because I do need to annotate. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I think it's good. Let's see what happens, right? All right, so this basically what this means is that this is the zone I get. So if I look at this initial, how did I get the annotation? Does anybody have an idea? How do you, is that the comment? Yeah, comment, good, all right. So yeah, so basically if I allow, if I see what happens with every transition, I go from one zone to another zone by applying these three rules. That is, I check the guard, I do the reset, and then I do time elapse. So for instance, from this initial zone, when I just reset both the clocks, I remain in the same zone, right? Because I reset back into the same X and Y, both are reset. So I go back to the same point and then I allow time elapse. And the zone graph, therefore, is defined by just saying, when I repeatedly keep applying these rules, what are all the zones I reach? And I can just pictorially represent this in this way. And formally, it is just saying what are the set of constraints that I got. Is this idea clear? So how we go? So for instance, if I do the same, this zone, and then I apply once more this transition, I will go to the next zone, which is this line, right? So this is kind of the zone graph. And what I want to point out is that another way to write this zone graph can just be the following, which is you take this as the start rule. We start with the initial zone, and we say whenever a zone is inside the current set of reachable zones, this, by the way, this pair of a state and a zone is what we will call as a node. Okay, so that's kind of just this pair, right? So if the node is already there in a set, and if there is a transition which goes from Q to Q prime, then we will, and if Z prime is the zone and this zone is non-empty, it doesn't collapse and become empty, then we will add the zone, the node Q prime Z prime to this set S. So this is exactly saying that this is a new reachable node, and we add it to the set. And this is how, this is the fixed point computation. Is this clear? Now, once we have this, we can see immediately that this zone construction is sound, complete, but it doesn't terminate, because here even, for instance, you can see that when I keep applying this transition, I keep going up, 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 and so on. So because it's not terminating, what can we do? So basically, to get termination on zone graph, this is again classical result. The idea is one idea is to use simulations, which is to say that if you look at the graph explode by doing this zone operations, you can basically not explore at a node if you can find that this node is simulated by a node already existing. So if you find that everything that you can do here could also already have been done, why explore here, right? And this is called a simulation. And in further, it's called a finite simulation if it is the case that in any infinite path in the zone graph, there are two nodes which are simulated to each other, right? So this, with these two properties, you are guaranteed that it not only preserves soundness and completeness, but it is also a finite exploration. Is that clear? And now, of course, the question is, do such finite simulations exist? And for this, in fact, it turns out that there are many such simulations. And the classical one, which is kind of used in practice, used in UPAL, used in many tools, and we will be using in our experiments, is called the LU abstraction. Right? And I won't tell you what is the LU abstraction here. I will just say that in this case, for instance, we can see that this zone already is simulated by the initial zone. So after this, I don't need to explore anything further. I can just put a back edge here, and that will be correct. Now, if you have more doubts on this, you can ask many others in the audience. I think Srivatsan has some nice lecture notes, and and you can refer to that. Actually, for this talk, we don't really care what the simulation is. So we don't really care how it was proved that this was finite. We only care that such a finite simulation exists. Okay, and we will be able to lift it to pushdown automata. Now the point is, this can be captured in the rewrite rule format very easily by saying that add a new node only if it is not already simulated by an existing node in my computed set. Is that clear? So is this clear what this rewrite rule is? And so basically the classical theorem for for timed automata is just that this saturation algorithm is sound, complete, and terminating. to compute the set of all reachable nodes in a TO. Okay, so now we go to the real problem, which is that what happens when you go from timed automata to push down timed automata. Okay, so is this part clear? At least do you get an idea what are the points which I used for zones? Those of you who already know zone, I hope this should have been the only takeaway, right? Okay, if there are no questions, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, you have 5 more minutes, huh?
5 minutes more than enough. Okay, all right. So basically the point is we are going to try the same trick. So let's try the same approach for push down timed automata, which I defined earlier, right? So now the point is, what was this graph exploration doing? It was saying start with the initial node. And as long as you have no push pop nodes are seen, you just explore as you were doing in a timed automata. So you get that is by kind of time elapse and then guards and then resets and then time elapse and so on. This is the same thing as before, right? Now when you see a push, essentially you are starting a new context. So you basically push and get a new tree which you start there, and then again do the same thing, right? So now what happens when you see a pop? If this pop matches the push, then essentially this means that the context is complete. So actually you come back here and you continue exploration from the state which you reached. Is this clear? So all we are saying is that we basically, instead of having one tree, you can have many such trees, many such explorations. And this can be captured again as reachability rules, where we actually now have this set of nodes computed, but it is parameterized by the root node, right? So this is the same set of rules as before. And in addition, we also maintain the set of root nodes also as a separate list. Okay, so you have a bunch of lists, and this is your start list. And what we are saying is that when you are making an internal move, you will say in which tree you are making that internal move, and only in that you add that list. Okay, so that's kind of it. And yeah, so basically this is the internal mode. And when you make a new push, you actually increase. You actually kind of augment the set of root nodes also with one more. So this is exactly what was shown in the picture, right? There's nothing else. Pop, I won't explain in this talk. So the point is, again, this set of rules is sound, complete for well-nested control state reachability, but it's not terminating, which is why, because now we have two sources of infinity. Either the number of nodes within a tree could be infinite, or the number of roots also could be infinite, because the number of push is unbounded, right? So how do we tackle this? Well, for the number of nodes inside the tree, we know that we can use the simulation relation. That's kind of the pruning technique that I told you before, right? So that handles it, everything is good. But it turns out that the same thing does not work when we are trying to look at the root nodes. In other words, if I find at this point that this Q1, Q2 simulates Q1, Z1 simulates Q2, Z2, then I cannot say, okay, don't put a dotted line here and just compute here, and we lose soundness. There is a concrete example in our CAF paper, but if there's more time or later, we can kind of discuss why this is the case also. So it turns out that actually what we need is that among the roots, instead of just asking for simulation, we need the reverse simulation also to exist. And if both of them are true, that's not enough. We also need, so we need the reverse simulation. I think there's a slide which is missing here. We also need the fact that the number of, so we can have basically kind of a strong notion of simulation, which says that the number of root nodes, if I take an arbitrary number of such nodes, two of them will be related by this equivalence relation. Okay, so that's kind of the strong simulation. I think there's one slide which is missing here. Yeah, all right. So we need equivalence among root nodes, and we need the fact that this is a strong finite simulation, which essentially means that among the root nodes, if I have an infinite collection of root nodes, two of them will be actually related by this equivalence relation, which seems to be a strong property. But again, it turns out that the hard work is done for us, and all these LU abstractions and all these abstractions do satisfy this property. Okay, and this is kind of the crux of the paper, which is to say that if you take equivalence among the root nodes and you take simulation within the nodes, we are able to get a sound, complete, and terminating procedure. So this is kind of the crux of the talk. And now what you can point out is this can be easily captured in this rule-based view, which is basically just say that for the internal and pop rules, we prune those trees whenever we have simulation. And for the push rule, we prune only when there is equivalence between the root nodes. Okay, so that's kind of the theorem. And kind of in the remaining 3 minutes, I'll kind of just give you an idea of what are the problems in the implementation. Well, it's not very surprising to say that we need to come up with a good data structure, and we need to decide on the order of the exploration, and we need to actually avoid revisiting the explored nodes already in a clever way. And for this, we use kind of a 2-level hash table, which is something like this, right? So we have a hash table which stores the roots, and from each root, we have a table which stores the kind of the computation, the set computation as a separate set, right? So this kind of is a brief idea of what we do. And this has been implemented on top of this open source tool called T-Checker. And we tried actually doing 2 ways of pruning. We not only tried this simulation within trees and equivalence across roots, but we also tried applying equivalence everywhere, which we can show is also a valid way of doing it. But of course, that makes the exploration grow much larger. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier to Shubhashish's question, we can now compare it with the 2017 work, which is the tree automata region-based approach. And we indeed noticed that pretty much on all the benchmarks that we tried, this simulation within trees and equivalence across root beats the other methods, right? I mean, it's way better than the region abstraction, where most of the time the region abstraction goes out of memory. And even with respect to the equivalence, it's significantly better in when you increase the clock parameters. So that's kind of the point about the experiments. And that brings me to kind of the last slide, which is what is the conclusion? Well, you can use simulation to prune branches, but if you have these push down stacks, you have new computations you have to do. And at that point, using equivalence makes things work. Right. I'll complete with a couple of last remarks. One is that there is a way to lift this result from well-nested reachability to general reachability. A second point to observe is that, as I mentioned earlier, we use any finite simulation, any strong finite simulation works. And so we don't need to just restrict to LU abstraction, which is used in Upal, but actually this so-called G abstraction, which is introduced by Srivatsan and Paul and his student, also allows us to take this to PDTA with diagonal guards. This has not been implemented, but theoretically there is nothing stopping us from implementing. There's a lot of scope for improvement, and there is a very nice link between this theory and liveness or repeated reachability in timed automata. And I'd be those of you who have looked at some of this timed automata liveness paper may already see the resemblance. Otherwise, yeah, we can discuss this offline. Yeah, so thanks a lot. Yeah, I wanted to also say that though we claim that we have a potential application to Boolean programs with timers, we don't have many benchmarks. So if some of you have nice benchmarks, we can try this out on those. So our tool is an open source tool, which is available on GitHub. So I mean, I'd be happy if you can download and check it out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Akshay. We can take a couple of minutes for questions. Please ask him.
Hi, Akshay. Subodh here. I've got
Subodh.
Hi.
Yeah.
So, quick question. Why is there any there a restriction on Boolean programs, this application of this entire theory? Is there a particular reason for application to only Boolean programs, or it could be?
It's just, yeah, it's just automata. So if you can model it as a push-down automata, we can do it.
I see.
So as long as you give us a push-down automata in which the real time is required, we can do it. So if you take an arbitrary program, you may have to convert it into a push-down automaton, but any tool, if you can convert or if you can abstract it into a push-down automaton, then our tool will give you the way to handle it. We don't have a parser right now for that, but I think there exist parsers, right? You would know better.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, Sparsho here.
Hey, Sparsho.
Hi.
Yes, yes.
So I have a question regarding the tool. So the zone takes care of the timing in the clocks, right? So how we are handling the time in the stacks?
Very good point. Thanks. Actually, I should have mentioned this earlier. we don't handle the time in the stacks. That's why this is push down timed automata, unlike the timed push down automata, which is a kind of this what shall I say, a result where you can also have, so just for the others. So basically, there are, as I mentioned in the beginning of the talk, this notion of push down timed automata, you can define in different ways. And a more powerful model is if on the stack also you have a clock. For instance, you allow a clock which is reset and checked at the end of the stack, right? So which is, and or you can have even more complicated constraints, like saying that it's when you push, you start the clock, and when you pop, you check how much time has elapsed with respect to some other constraint. So these kind of things are more complicated constraint, and currently the tool does not handle any of them. Because of this Clemente-Lasota paper, there is an exponential, an algorithm with an exponential blow up, right? Spatial. So you can of course use that, but that's a very stupid way to do that. I think the 2020 paper has a way to do it, which is much more clever than this.
Yes.
Yeah. So
or that might be.
Yeah, we can take one last question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will ask this thing about, so could you elaborate a bit about the tree structure? Like how does the tree come? I think this is something which was not very clear to me.
So it's just the reachability tree, the graph exploration. Basically, you agree. So at this point, we had this thing where we explored from a node, all the nodes that we reach, right? So it's not really, I mean, that's why it's better to think of it as the set of nodes that we are exploring rather than a tree. I'm just drawing it in that way, but it's just the set of reachable nodes. That's it.
So you mean that it comes because of the non-determinism?
Because of the non-determinism, yes. In the timed automaton, you have you can explore any which way, right? Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay.
That's right.
I see. Okay.
All right. Supratik has asked a question, so yeah, let's take him also. Supratik.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, if you're out of time, I can ask it offline to Akshay also. But okay, since I'm speaking, let me just state this. I think the last point, Akshay's last slide. I mean, so why are there lack of benchmarks? I mean, is it that this is not a natural model of computation, or is it that there is work to I mean, is it that somebody has to do some,
I think somebody has to do a little bit of groundwork. I think the thing is that there is a lot of work on Boolean programs, and in fact parsers from arbitrary C programs to Boolean programs, how to different approaches for Boolean programs. But to look at those with timers, we need to, I think, somebody should look at it. So in some sense, I think to answer your question, Supratik, in another way, I guess it's also that if you don't have a very good already a tool which is able to kind of give you any results at all, it's kind of not very useful to develop benchmarks, right? So it's only when you start having a set of tools that people start developing benchmarks also, which so each group develops its own benchmarks, and then you start comparing, and then you start having competitions and so on. So this has not happened.
I mean, benchmarks are not developed for use by existing tools. Tools are developed for analyzing benchmarks, right? I mean,
that's very true. But as you know very well, I mean, very often it works both ways. So competitions, for instance, many of the tools are built by groups which are working in that area. I mean, even in 2QBF, for instance, right? But we know that there are real industrial level benchmarks.
All I'm saying is that I think in all fields where there are competition benchmarks, the set of benchmarks is really a minuscule fraction of the actual applications.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the application. I mean, you look at whatever, model checking, you look at theorem proving, you look at satisfiability, SMT, synthesis. I mean, the actual set of problems is much, much wider than the set of benchmarks that are available for use by tools. So, I mean, I think, because I do not know this area much, so I'm basically asking that, is it the case that there are already exist tons of benchmarks, but somebody already exists tons of, real applications, somebody just has to convert those into benchmarks? Are there proprietary issues that, people don't want to release these benchmarks in the public, or is it just that there aren't enough applications?
We have found both things, that there are proprietary issues. There are, so I maybe I'm not in the right position to say whether, who is interested or where, so what I can say is that, to me, having Boolean programs with time, given the fact that Boolean programs without time have been analyzed, seems to be a very natural, and I cannot believe that there are no benchmarks on that. But maybe we have not made enough effort to reach out to the industry. And this is the reason why I chose to give this talk rather than any other talk. Is I thought there are a lot of fun people here who would maybe be able to answer your question better than me.
All right, let's thank the speaker and go to the next talk. Thank you, Akshay.
Yep, thanks so much.